Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Grow Support. My name is Neil, and today I'm sitting down with Steve Tonde to talk about the importance of building relationships. If there's anybody out there that's building relationships in a professional network, it's him. I see him out there all the time, engaging with the community, engaging with other professionals. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too. If you like this conversation, you can find it and many more at growsupport.io. Enjoy. Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining me for the conversation and taking the time out of your morning to really sit down and share your story and your thoughts and about your experience and support, how you got here, and about the importance of building relationships within your organization. For those people who don't know you, I mean, for me, it seemed like a very thoughtful, uh, very humble, and I would say approachable guy. And that's how we started talking and really getting to know each other as well. But for those who don't know you, can you maybe introduce yourself and who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So, that's very kind of you. So I'm going to say thank you. Thank you for the time here. Great question. So, Steve Tonde. I am the father of Mayana. She's 2 years old. So we're having lots of fun, lots of first. So that's the first thing I am, a dad. Hopefully I'm a cool one. We'll see as she ages. Um, but I am very fortunate to be the support desk manager at PayShepherd. PayShepherd is a platform that allows our clients in the heavy industry. So think about mining, pulp and paper, oil and gas, to have transparent conversation about how projects are being done, how funds are moving along, how the workforce are performing on certain projects. And so we're currently a team of 7. Where their go-to folks post sale. And the interesting part of our role is that we also participate in the pre-sales activity as well. So we're part of that preliminary discussion of as to how to use a platform and what the platform can do for them. And so we're in a unique position where we're able to know what they're doing from point before the sale all the way to sale. So that's builds in that personal relationship. And today, hopefully, I'm able to share some things not to do as you're embarking on your leadership path and support. And that's what I'm here to talk about today.
I love it. And being able to see your customers from the very start and already being set up for success and how to support them is a huge, I think, step that not a lot of people really get to take advantage of in that
Yep.
sense. And I love what you say. Like it really is about building that relationship. And yeah, I also hope I'm a cool dad at some point, but we'll see when they when they grow up. Always find that it's always up to them, not up to us. We can be as
Oh,
cool as we want.
absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm really curious. How did you get into support in the first place? What's your journey been like so far?
Great question again, man. It's as if you're doing this for a living. um, so, support. I dabbled. I was in university, so that's when I was in university. Um, Trying to figure out like what will be my next step. I was fortunate enough that the wife had a friend that was a general manager at an insurance company, needed a person that was tech savvy that could figure things out and was very personable. And so like, you know what, let me do this. Hopped in, realized like I really enjoy talking to people. I really enjoy building relationships and figuring things out. And then that seems to be the cornerstone of a lot of support roles, right? It's like, hey, as long as you might not know the product, but as long as you know people and you're able to connect with people and figure things out on your own, or at least try and be empathetic, you'll be able to follow your path. And so that led me to another opportunity. And then the common thread throughout those opportunities was essentially that connecting with people internally, externally, building meaningful relationships, figuring things out, and being empathetic along the way. And so 8 years, not a complete lie, 9 years later, I'm here doing the exact same thing, and hopefully I learned some stuff along the way. And yeah, that's pretty much my path, man.
Nice. And you said the common theme is really building relationships there and creating these connections as you go.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and really being able to, you know, learn from those experiences and those people that you connect with in that
Absolutely.
sense. Is
Yeah.
there a moment that was like a turning point for you where you were like, "Oh, I really need to start building these relationships," and you found the importance of doing it?
Honestly, I would say a lot, but there's one top of mind. I'm very passionate about this topic, just for this exact reason. So, previous organization, my first leadership role, um, I'm super excited. Like, I'm so motivated. I'm pumped. Like, I'm gonna do all the things and change all the things. I'll do this, do this. And so I just come in, inherit a team, um, and I go straight into like solution mode and not even building the trust and importance of like, hey, team cohesion. So I'm like, yo, let's do this. And then lucky enough, my team was, I guess, I don't know if they were just very enamored by my energy, or is it like, you know what, let's just, this guy's crazy, he's got the energy, let's follow him. And so I just started implementing solutions that I thought were important. Um, Came over and then realized my initiatives were spilling over into other teams as well, product and development and CSM, and then realizing the effects of my hasty decisions and how I hadn't the full scope of the picture. And so, because of that, um, I got quick, easy wins within the first couple of weeks, but the long term effects of my decision making and lack of building relationships lasted a month, 2 months, quarters. And so, because of that, I was like, yo, you know what? Maybe, in fact, I could pause, spend some time with product and knowing my team, I can start to understand the bigger picture as to what's important to the organization, what's important to our clients, and not just from the lens of our ticketing system. And so, yeah, that's why I'm very passionate about this, because I clearly know what I clearly have an incident here of what happened. I'm like, yeah, let's not do that again. That hurt too bad.
You see the repercussions of those quick decisions when you don't have the full scope of information. You
Yep.
mentioned, sitting with the team, with the product team, understanding them and their side a little bit more outside of the scope of the ticketing system.
Yep.
How do you start building those relationships within your organization? I mean, you talk about the other departments and cross-functional. How do you go about
Yep.
it?
Yeah.
Just from a
So,
personal view and maybe something for someone else.
yeah, absolutely. So the way I've been going about it is essentially one-on-ones. Yes, they're an important tool in your career trajectory. I say spend time with your team, getting to know what they're about, what's their career aspirations, and most importantly, how do they receive feedback, positive and negative feedback, and how do they want to be praised? Is it publicly? Is it, hey, send me a quick email and I'm good? Or is it more like, hey, let's go through a formal process and get this documented? All right. And noticing those strengths and weaknesses of each individual and communicating in the language they receive it. It does require a bit, does require a bit of work, but it outweighs the amount of wins that you're getting in the long run, right? If you're able to present information in the way that people who get it, if you're able to connect to them on the emotional level, the way they connect on the emotional level. And so it eliminates a lot of that confrontation, that barrier to like, okay, I know what Steve is about. I know what Neil's about. Okay, this is our goal. We're talking the right language. We're calibrating to the same language. Let's get the thing done. And then you're then more inclined to let me know, like, hey, Steve, I know you're focused about this, but this is a bigger goal. And then since we're talking the same language, cool, we're on the same page. And so that's how I've been going about it. A lot of exercise around emotional intelligence, communication types. There's a few colors. I'm sure you're familiar with that: the orange, green, yellow, all that stuff. Figuring that out, realizing if the person is introverted, extroverted, all that stuff plays into how well you build relationships with it, directly with your team or across different functions as well. I hope that.
I For one-on-one specifically with the team, I think it's really important to build that safe space and build that trust in those times.
Yep.
What I find super often in a rhythm that I try to learn from at least is that in the past, some of my one-on-ones became very operational. Just, hey, what do you got
Yep.
going on with the check-in?
Oof.
What are you working on right now? And when you get into that and you slip into that, I would say slippery slope in a way, you'd start not necessarily building that trust and relationship. You start
Mhm.
kind of really just focusing in on what are the tasks that we're doing. It's not
Yep.
valuable. I mean, it is valuable, but at the same time, it's not the place. I
Yep.
had one rep who thought that one-on-ones were a performance review every time, so they were afraid to really bring a
Yeah.
lot of
Yep.
information, and then we
Absolutely.
had to sit and reframe it, and they were like, "I feel like I lost out on 6 months of opportunity for this because
Exactly.
we were doing it," and I was like, we
Yep.
don't need to
And they
change that. It's a
exactly.
place for you. I mean, those were that is where those relationships are built,
Yep.
in a way.
Yep.
You talk about one-on-ones and really building that trust, speaking the same language, in that sense, and really with your team understanding their values, where they're at, and how to approach feedback. When you look at it on a maybe a 360 view from your cross-functional peers or those above you, do you go about building those relationships differently than you would with your team?
Great question. So I wish I was super smart and suave and say like, yeah, you know what, I got this framework that does this and that. Actually, no, it's more about really connecting, um, try to connect on an emotional level, understand like, hey, what are your hobbies? What are you into? Just because I guess I'm a curious person. I guess that's why I'm in support as well, curiosity. And so understand what they're about, understand what their family life is about, if they're privy and kind of to share that with me, and then move into the work stuff and start to figure out like, hey, what's priority for you? Like, okay, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to win, right? The company's trying to win as a whole, and so if I can help you win in your initiatives, you're most likely going to help support win because you start to see it as a whole. It's not just okay, it's my little silo of the department. It's not just like only support, only product, only dev, it's only CS. There's a group effort. Everybody's important in this role, and so it's important that we connect. I understand what's your priority. I understand what's coming in the pipeline, and then I'm more inclined to go, okay, you know what, this bug or this way of approaching something, requesting feature for this client. I can start speaking more about the product line. Like, hey, there's a priority. The right you see here. The reason why is because this high churn rate brings in this much amount of dollars. Speak their language and start to understand like, hey, this is priority sits on such metrics because I'm communicating the way that they value and measure success on their part, and so they can do vice versa for me as well. And so the process hasn't changed in terms of reaching out to people. It might just be a bit more focused towards the I guess the metrics and what's important to their organization, throughout their teams as a whole, but still the same process in terms of kind of the human level and figuring out what's important to them.
It's the making connections is the same regardless what you say. It's just the
Yeah,
maybe the most important thing that you mentioned between both commonalities of one-on-ones with your team and also building other cross-functional relationships is
yeah,
speaking their language, being
yeah.
able to understand how they operate and how they speak and what's important to them.
Mm,
You can really start to make those connections at the same time. You
absolutely.
you you mentioned as well, it's not just about internal connections that you make from your organization, how you move things across the board, how you start to really speak their language and build those relationships, but you're also super active in the support community in general, like both in social forums like LinkedIn and other things like Support Driven and other communities as well. Have those relationships changed the way that you approach support and the way that you operate a bit?
Yeah, lovely question. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. There's so much like great advice. There's so many knowledgeable folks. There's so many kind folks in our industry, and so since my role and function at PayShipper is to serve our clients to the highest degree, it would be, I guess, it would be rude and unfair to me to not try to engage with folks that are senior to me that know a bit more or that have tricks in the trade and bring that up our clients. And so connecting with folks like you that have years in the game, are able to share the wisdom, focus areas, and how learning how to navigate difficult conversation, because that's also part of building relationships, right? Navigating those very, very tough conversations with clients that you've been clients with, you've built a relationship for years, going back to like, hey, I know you wanted that feature. It's not a priority right now for X and Y reason. And if you build a strong enough relationship with that client, they can understand. Like, okay, I understand why you've never you never BS me before. So I know it's coming down the pipeline. I'm sad about it, but I understand. And so that's important. But yeah, building a relationship with our folks in the industry has been very instrumental in shaping the way I frame my frameworks and I implemented solutions in my day-to-day. There's just so much wealth of knowledge. And as you know, working in SaaS and support, we kind of need to be at the forefront of understanding how things are trending moving forward and taking what's good for organization and applying it. Obviously, you fine-tune it to make sure it's relevant to your use cases. But yeah, absolutely. It's been a wealth of knowledge and it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, same for me. I mean, before I was networking in the communities and everything and really starting to build those relationships outside, it was like, I think this is a great idea. Let's do this because, I want to try it. And then you go to maybe some of the other folks in the community and they're like, no, why would you do that? Like, maybe
That's
try this
very
instead.
bad.
Get some of that great advice. I think if you want to grow and develop as well and have that mindset, it not only affects the things within your organization that you build, but also the connections you make outside of it impacts your
Yeah.
customer experience and the way that you approach things in that way as well.
And to add to that, yeah, I like that. That's a great point. And to add to that, there is the, for example, right, having through conversation with you and Sarah Caminetti, that you start to realize, like, okay, I need to start thinking not from the lens of just the support angle. I need to understand what's a priority. How do I do that? Like, that's been a big shift in my career, right? Through conversation with you, other support leaders, saying, hey, I know you're focused on trends. I know you're focused on enhancing the product. I know you're enhancing the internal processes. But have you thought about how what you're doing relates to the bigger company goal? Maybe for a lot of people, this is obvious, but for a guy like me that took time to figure things out, like, oh, shoot, yeah, maybe I should stop zoning in so much and take time to zone out a bit and then do that balancing act of like zoning in deep into the data and then also making sure, okay, is what I'm doing at the zoomed in level apply and is it important to the organization as a whole? So I've learned that through conversations and build a relationship with you folks.
I love what you say about the having that helicopter view, zooming in when you need to or not. One of the things I think for me specifically that I've really had to try to practice in building these relationships as well, like I very consciously had to think about it as well when it comes to like that inside and outside level of thinking,
Yeah.
is specifically with your team, like people it's maybe in our roles that are crafting and building the experience and need to make those connections and relationships with the rest of the business sometimes get caught in like, oh yeah, the business and the strategy and the overlying, and then we're like, hey teams, we're gonna do this big thing, this is crazy, and they're like, well, this doesn't relate to my day-to-day and what I need to do, and maybe that can cause some confusion. So I always like pointing out, it's like when we do start building these relationships, again, relating back to what you say about speaking their language, like it's super important to understand the way and level that we might communicate with people above us or at our level might not be the same way that we need to communicate and speak to what it means for them.
Absolutely.
And speak their language as well. So it's you just reminded me of that when you say, when you need to zoom out and zoom in and find the balance and when to switch, is huge.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah. And that's something I'm still figuring out. Like, previous role, something similar happened where I was communicating to the C-suite, but the way I was approaching it was very, very like zoomed in to the tickets and ticket numbers. And so I was super lucky that one of the C-suite members was like, hey, love the enthusiasm, you're doing great. And the C-suite was actually a direct reporting manager was like, "Hey, I've been in your role, Steve," and like, he would stop the company and say, "I've been in your role, Steve, but not everyone here understands to that degree." And just a little pause and go, "Oh shoot, okay." Then allow me to like zoom out and then, okay, so we start talking in the revenue point of view. What this initiative has allowed us from a revenue standpoint. What does this does from an operation standpoint? But yeah, that's it's tough, man, when you're in and out and in and out, and sometimes you just forget where you are. But yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
It's a very interesting thing. I mean, I'm curious, when do you think people should start to change that view? Like, obviously, if you're coming in as a support specialist, you're starting your career, or maybe you're the only support person, or maybe you're a middle manager in that sense, or you're starting to go to that level. Like, when do you think people should start to think about shifting from more short term, this is action thinking, to that longer term type of thinking?
Wow, great question. I don't think there is a universal like, hey, this applies like 3 months in, you should start to think strategic, and then
Oh.
you're in exactly. You start to think about finances and stuff. No, it's more. I think it's to the needs of the organization. But yes, there's definitely that need for like switching depending on where you are. And so I think that it's very dependent on company culture. Obviously, it plays into it. The size of the company, um, the level of team that you handle. So if you're handling a team of 30 plus individuals, then maybe early on, you have to start thinking of like, hey, how do I approach things? Because you won't be in the weeds in sport tickets as much, right? You'll be more into handling and passing out strategy and making sure it's clearly communicating and following up on those bigger company initiatives. Um, when it comes to managing a small team, maybe at that point it becomes a bit of an exercise of a daily basis of like, hey, ticket time and internal implementation time, team time, and then moving out to doing that exercise there. But yeah, I think it's very dependent on what your organization need, and you have to be it's a balancing act and being versatile. So yeah, hopefully that gives some guidance. Curious to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. I don't think that there's one, hey, X amount of time in the role, you need to be starting to think about this. X amount of time later, you need to be thinking about that.
Yep.
I do agree with you. It really depends on the phase of the organization and also those relationships that you build within the organization, right? If you're not
Yeah.
making connections with your cross-functional peers, if you're not making connections with the people above you, you won't be able to, what you say when you're in the weeds talking about super detailed things, you won't understand who's been in that role or how to communicate
Yep.
with them or what level of thinking they need, in a sense.
Yep.
I do think that obviously, if you're an ambitious support agent and you're looking to make that jump, it could be really good to start early in making that muscle as you become more senior. Maybe you start thinking about, hey, this doesn't affect just my ticket and the person I'm
Mm-hmm.
working with, but maybe I start thinking about how the next 5 customers might engage with this ticket. And then you
I
start to
love.
expand that level of thinking, and you can
Yep.
work it as a muscle and start to grow out as you grow. And just from an agent standpoint to a team
Yep.
lead, you're not thinking about how's my team going to deal with these tickets today, but how are we going to deal with the tickets further on? How can we make it more efficient and start to expand that level of thinking? um, I think you can start early, building the muscle. At different levels you can start to build it up as well.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, like first starting off, I'll tell you like focus on understanding the product, focus on understanding the organization, what's important to them, and then when you have that inclination, like, hey, I really want to try and head into leadership and making teams successful, then as you said, right, start to flex that muscle and obviously collaborate with your manager, and see like, hey, what are certain areas that you notice that you're not giving your full attention to. I'd love to help you on that. So yeah, start to build a relationship with your manager. See, hey, let's do this together. Let's figure something out, and then flex that muscle as you inherit more and more responsibilities and roles. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, 100%. And I love what you say, and we're talking about, that learning journey and that development and that growth over time. I want to come back to that, but I want to cover one one more question and topic first that I think might be
Yeah.
super helpful for some people. We're talking about building relationships a lot. Relationships are a two-way street. Being
Yep.
able to you know, speak their language and build, but sometimes it's not reciprocated in the same way. Maybe people don't appreciate, or maybe there's a bit more friction in that relationship. Um, Maybe a stacked question here, but is there a time when you've had that difficult one-way street relationship, and how did you approach that situation? And maybe it's helpful for somebody to understand how they can navigate that.
Now I'm laughing because I knew that was coming. I was like, oh, that's gonna be a tough one. But yeah, you're right. The part of building relationships, right, is that you start to understand people a bit more. What's a priority? What's their fears? How they respond to conflict? How do they navigate stressful situations? And how do they give and receive negative feedback? And so, as much as I want to say, like, hey, you know what? When you're building a relationship, it's all rainbows and unicorns, or and we're kumbaya, there's no issue whatsoever, and we're all working together to a better objective. That doesn't really happen. Um, in a sense, like sometimes there's just friction, communication mishaps that happened. Um, the stress of like conflicting priorities take over, and you're just like, okay, you know what? And we default to our default settings. Like, "Hey, you know what? I'm just focus on what's important for my team alone." And so there's been a few instances throughout my career trajectory where um, things fell through the cracks. Come to find out, it wasn't me being a bad person or that person being a bad person. It's usually just a friction around communication or me not understanding fully their I guess not communication but emotional level. For example, I'll give a concrete example. Um, Feature release. Sorry, there was a feature release um, that would have impacted a huge client portfolio of ours. Um, when I asked like why was it released, I was trying to understand what was the mechanism that pushed that release. The response was something along the lines of like, "Hey, a, we're not contractually obligated to do such and such and such." I'm like, I get it, but when people use our platform, there's an understanding of such and such and such. And so because of we're removing that exact, we're sunsetting that feature, and we have clients that rely on that feature, and that's primarily the reasons why they're on top of the support and the great onboarding. But there's a reason why they sign up for our service. It's for that exact same feature that we've been selling them. There's something that happened there. And then the response again was like, hey, it's on the contract. And he's like, oh, okay. It's not that he's a bad person or he's trying to make my life harder. It's just okay, this person is very like literal. It's like what's in the contract is what it is. Like there's that not this disconnect, but like, hey, if A equals A, then it's A. Not understanding there's a lot more color around it. And so because of that, I was able to then go back and like, hey, look, there's support tickets, these trends, they tend to be around this functionality here. There's something we could do and put a conversation forward. But it was a very, very tough and hard conversation. But since I had built that relationship over time, when I did approach that individual, it wasn't like I'm attacking you. It was frustrating for me because I'm like, dude, why? Can you not hear it? Can you not see it? But yeah, it's having built that conversation. When we dug into the weeds, it was just more of a matter of fact, like business to business. Okay, we're exchanging, and then we got to the point like, okay, let's find a workaround for now. I understand where you're coming from, and now moving forward, that conversation, really uncomfortable conversation, shaped how I interact with that individual moving forward.
Yeah, I love that example because you have, I think, 2 points where building relationship is super important in difficult conversations. One, if it isn't early in the relationship like you're talking about here, you're learning how to navigate those for the future, and then you do build a deeper relationship moving forward because then you know how to communicate with them.
Yep.
At the same time, I can give an example from my experience where building that relationship early and having that established relationship comes really in handy when those difficult conversations come up. Because like I was having a conversation with one of our senior leaders. We
Yep.
had a critical outage. Like we shipped something it went super bad. Like one of those we had to have some, like a postmortem about it, everything. So
Ooh.
for us it was I was trying to have a conversation with the senior leader afterwards of like,
Mhm.
hey, we need to approach these differently in the future. This is my idea for how we could do that. This is what I
Mhm.
need from you. How are we gonna like what's gonna happen? How are we gonna avoid this one in the future? And things happen inside and outside of work, and times are
Absolutely.
stressful, and
Yep.
um, they weren't in the best place to have that conversation. And uh, I think recognizing how you communicate, like, "Hey, I've known you for years. We don't normally talk like this. Let's
Mhm.
take a step back and what's really going on?"
There you
Um,
go. There you go.
be because you have that really established relationship, or you built that relationship over time, it's much easier to take a step back and say, "Hey, I recognize this not is something's
This
different, something's off.
Mhm.
Let's talk about what's really going on," and
Yep,
then
yep.
we can handle the practical stuff, like, later. Um,
Absolutely.
I think those types of there's different points in which building this relationship help. Either these difficult conversations help you to build that relationship, because it's very I think if you can do it in a healthy way, it's super positive, right?
Yep.
If you have built that relationship, it helps you to navigate those difficult conversations later, because you can rely on the trust that you've
Yep.
built for so
Yep.
long.
Yep. I love that. At the end of the day, building a relationship, like you said, is about trust, right? And so if you're able to be vulnerable, like, and then recognize, like, yo, this is not usually how we interchange or come or interchange and change ideas. There's clearly something wrong here, or there's clearly something eating at you. And so let's like you said, let's figure things out. Let's take the time to pause on the operational stuff. Let's dig deep. Let's figure out what's eating at you, and then realize, like, oh, okay, there's a lot more. There's this, and there's obviously work stuff. There's a bigger initiative that's not having your full attention. Okay, well, let's collaborate. We're in this to win, right? What can I do to help? Or what can I allocate resources to help? Okay, cool. And it becomes a more of that exchange, right?
Yeah,
Love that.
a bit more back and forth in that sense. Um,
Yeah,
Thank you so much for sharing your experience on how building relationships is so critical and important, and giving some people some practical tips as well, from your experience. I'm I'm really curious, because we talked about learning and growth, as a support agent, and being able to grow, and when you start thinking about those things, and uh, obviously, I love the learning and development and growth aspect of it. I think you know what's coming, but I always ask the same question at the end, for people. If you had one really thing that you've learned across your entire journey, it doesn't need to be at Base Shepherd or support, but in your professional career, what's one thing that you've learned that you still hold to today, that you would love to share?
absolutely. Yep, I knew it was coming. Um, I think one of the most important thing, um, it's about revisiting the past. I know sometimes like, hey, don't think in the past, but what I mean by that is revisit the past, but don't focus on your wins, right? Because you got those in the bag. You're very good at what you're doing. Yay. Good. Yes, that's awesome. Yay. But really focus on where did your in French is a word like lacune. So that's where did you lack? Where did you not be 100%? Not in the performance point of view, but like where was your mindset? And we focus on that and try to get those lessons so you can do better for next time. Essentially, leadership is about building relationships with people, trying to do your best, and sometimes we come short. And so, what can I do to get better at it? So, long story short, look to the past for guidance because that's going to help predict like where you're going in the future.
I realized we said that this was the end, but you mentioning that, and that reflection and that personal introspection triggers like in me, my immediate thought was, it's not about just building relationships externally with people in your organization,
Yep.
and externally in people in the community, in the network, but at the same time, it's about building that relationship with yourself, as well, for when you think about, when you reflect back on your past experiences, like you mentioned,
Yep.
you start to have those conversations internally. How do you
Hmm.
give that feedback to yourself? Is it in a
Yep.
positive way? Are you building that relationship with yourself as well? Because I know, like, for me, I used to, in the very old times, just think about, like, I was so stupid. I messed up in that
Yep.
moment. But building a relationship with yourself, trying to reframe that now, Like, why would you call yourself stupid? You're not stupid. Like, that's just
Yeah.
degrading to yourself. You need to build
Yeah.
that positive relationship when you think back in that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
I tried to reframe it in such a way that it's like, if I failed, did I learn something from it? If I learned
Mhm.
something from it,
You
I've
didn't fail.
actually grown and I didn't
There
fail.
you go.
So, because I've grown instead. So,
Love it. Yeah, it's there's nothing wrong with being with failing, right? It's just if you think about it, it is one of the most human things you can do. Like if you've never failed, it's either you're lying or like you're not living life because life is about failing, like in any endeavor. And so it's no different in leadership, building relationships. It's really about reframing it, revisiting it. Hey, how can I do better for next time? Or what lessons did I learn? Framing that's how I've been framing it for the past couple of years. What lessons did I learn from this?
yeah.
Yeah,
I love it. And as we're talking about building relationships, Steve, where can people build a relationship with you? Is there a
yeah,
way that they can connect with you? Open to that?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Maybe one of these days I might do something as cool as you and start podcasting. But for now, LinkedIn. I also have a blog on Medium called the Customer Support Chronicles. The goal there is just to share my learnings and my failures as I navigate the support world. But that's the best platforms to reach out to me: LinkedIn and the Customer Support Chronicles blog.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Steve, for your time. I really appreciate it and sharing your experience and thoughts with everybody. Thank you so much.
Mhm. Thank you, Neil. I wish you a great day.
You as well.